Now, another question, how do we get to know our future? Is it because the spirits know it already, or is that from God to them to pass on to you? Or is it from God directly to pass on to you?
Well, you must
remember...
remember...
When you have premonitions and all that sort of stuff as well.
Sure. In the spirit world, there's a couple of things that happen. Firstly, every night you go to sleep, right? And you're a spirit when you're asleep. You actually leave your body, go out of your body, and you're in the sleep state in the spirit world every single night. Our body lays there resting, and we're out doing things in the spirit world every single night. Now, some of those events you may remember. Most people on earth don't remember them because we're very, very close to the idea that we're actually got a spirit body and we've got a whole existence in our sleep. However, some of us, and particularly when we're little, when we're small children, generally we remember pretty much most of our experience. But as we grow up, that experience gets eventually closed down, and eventually we don't remember. So here we are, we're a spirit body now in the sleep state in the spirit world. Now, it's very easy for us to plan things about what's going to happen the next day in that state. We can even meet people in the spirit world and then plan to meet them the next day or the next week. And when you meet them, you go, gee, I'm sure I know you. I'm positive that I've met you. And it's highly likely you have in the sleep state, in the spirit world, if you have not met them on earth before. And so, firstly, we have the ability to plan our life when we're asleep as much as when we're awake. So that's the first thing. Secondly, there's no time in the spirit world in the sense that we think of time. And also, a spirit not only can see what's immediately in your own vicinity, but they can see the thoughts of every single individual around you. And as such, they can start to predict to a large degree of accuracy what you're going to do tomorrow, and who you're going to meet tomorrow, in fact. And not only tomorrow, but a year time, and even sometimes, depending on how predictable we are, 5 years' time or 10 years' time, they can even look forward and see all of the interactions that are going to occur. Spirits are highly mathematical brains. You know, on Earth, we're only using, 10% or less of our brain. In the spirit world, you're using 100% of your brain.
Yep.
Right? So you have the ability to analyse very, very rapidly and see all of the different things that are going on. Now, a spirit in the second sphere obviously has that capacity to a lesser extent than a spirit in the sixth sphere. And that spirit has a capacity to a far lesser extent than a spirit in the eighth dimension and so forth. But we still have the capacity. So what that means then is that I can drop thoughts into your mind or even tell you what's going to happen tomorrow, next week, next month, 10 years' time, given the set of situations that I see around you, your emotions, what you're thinking about, what the other people that are surrounding you that you have not even yet met are thinking about, their own situation, all those kind of things, and I can predict a lot of the future. Now, sometimes I'll get it wrong, and that's why when some spirits come and talk to a medium and the medium says this is going to happen, you go away, go, oh, that's interesting, and then 6 months later it still hasn't happened, 12 months later it still hasn't happened, right? And in those kind of cases, then the spirit obviously didn't know all the facts, and so therefore couldn't predict the events accurately. But the stronger the better the spirit is in terms of connection with love and connection with God, the more accurate their predictions are going to become. And in fact, a spirit who's in the 21st or 22nd dimension, which is much higher again, they can predict hundreds of years into advance what is going to happen.
Okay.
All right. So it becomes very, very easy then for them, if they can communicate that to a person on Earth, it becomes easy for them to actually say to a person, this is going to happen in your life in 5 years' time, or this is going to happen in your life in 2 years' time. Now, you still have free will, and on top of that, if you deal with the different emotional conditions that create your attractions, you can change that event. So let me give you an example of that. There's a man I knew who lived over in Western Australia. He was staying with us, and he was working for a friend of mine. And the friend of mine was a medium, a person who could talk to spirits. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So this friend one night got this message from a spirit saying that actually they would that he would die in a car accident within 1 month. Right? And my friend John just was very, very concerned about that, so we were talking about it, and he's saying, what do I do? What do I do about that? Right? And what I finished up saying to him is, look, tell the man. And tell the man why. Ask the Spirit, why would he die in a month? And the Spirit told John that actually he'd die because there's a problem with his car, and where the brake linings of the brake hydraulics of the braking system in his car were so worn that within the next month they would break, and he would have a very severe car accident, and probably because he travelled on country roads, it would be a very severe car accident, and he'd probably die from it. Now, once John told the man jacked up his car and had a look at the front end of his car, and sure enough, the whole front end with regard to the brakes were all badly frayed and damaged, and he replaced them all. And now when John had another chat with the Spirit, it's not going to happen now. So can you see how oftentimes the Spirit is giving us an indication of what may happen based on if we follow that course of action continually? So if the man never checked his car, high likelihood that event would have occurred. But now that the man's checked his car and fixed it all up, now that event doesn't occur. Yeah. So many times spirits are actually telling us events of our future so that we can avoid them. But we then go, that's predestined for our future, and we don't change anything, and sure enough, that particular event occurs. Yeah. But oftentimes, if we allowed ourselves, we would actually see that we could actually change the event if we deal with certain law of attraction that comes from our soul that attracts those events. Yeah. So it's actually very powerful to speak more and get more clear knowledge. You see, a lot of people who are mediums have this belief system that if I'm hearing something from a spirit, it means it's fixed in concrete. I can't change that. Many people have that belief. Other people have the belief that it's not so much fixed in concrete, but it's highly unlikely that it's going to change. And many of other people too have a sort of an interest fascination where they almost create the event. So for example, if I say to you, next week you're going to be in this particular situation, and I explain the situation in quite a bit of detail, now your own feelings are heightened about noticing that particular situation. Mm-hmm. So me telling you has automatically changed your behaviour. Yep. Does that make sense? So this is why spirits who are much higher spirits generally will not tell you about events of the future, because they want you to exercise your free will. They want you to enable your passions and desires and exercise your free will. They generally don't disclose things about your future because they only do it when your life is in danger generally. And that's when they generally do let you know what's going on. But unfortunately, we then think, well, our spirit's telling me what's going to happen in the future. This spirit must know everything, and we automatically make the assumption that no matter where they are in the spirit world, they must know everything. And then we make the mistake of then going along with these choices and decisions that are actually being made by somebody else. In other words, we give up our free will. Mm-hmm. We actually now we're now doing something the spirit's saying to us rather than what we've decided to do with our life. Mm-hmm. So my feelings are more along the lines of God created you to exercise your own free will. God created you too with these inbuilt desires. There's a couple of primary desires. One primary desire is for you to meet a mate. Yep. And in particular to meet your soulmate. We had this discussion with Glenn and myself last night, just how, the soulmate desire leads us in all sorts of directions. He was saying a very interesting comment, how even the car that he bought was because he wanted to meet his soulmate, and show off a car sort of thing. So, that primary desire drives many of our actions in the course of a day, actually. There's also a primary desire in our life of connecting with God. Does that make sense? Yeah. And that primary desire, if it's unrecognised, will often cause us many problems where we connect to other people, substituting them for God, basically. And there are many other desires and passions that each of us have that are unique. So some of you have a passionate desire for music. Some of you have a passionate desire for art. Some of you have a passionate desire for both. Some of you have a passionate desire for engineering, electronics, all sorts of different things. And God inbuilt in us specific desires that are part of our personality as a part of our original pristine condition. But how we act upon those things is dependent on our free will, totally.